Man, whoever got the motherfucking freeway blocked out need to get y'all shit together, dog. God damn. Nick can't even get on the fucking freeway. And y'all got the freeway blocked off all the way on Polk, dog. The fuck they got going?
Yella Beezy confronted Trapboy Freddy for snitching. Two men who recorded a project called I'm My Brother's Keeper, who swore loyalty to each other publicly for years, who came up together out of Oak Cliff before either of them had a deal, are now at the center of the most explosive betrayal story in Dallas rap history. Yella Beezy is fighting a capital murder charge in the Mo 3 case, staring down life in prison or the death penalty. And when word got back to him that Trapboy Freddy may have helped investigators build that case, the confrontation was unavoidable. To understand why this hits so hard, you have to understand how far back these two go. Maris Conway, the world knows him as Yella Beezy, grew up in Oak Cliff, grinding through mixtapes in the early 2010s before That's On Me broke out in 2017 and turned him into a major label artist with over 1 billion streams. Trapboy Freddy, born Devarius Dante Moore, came up out of that same neighborhood with the same hunger, recording his first mixtape in 30 days after buying a $1,400 home studio kit and eventually landing a breakout record of his own with Lil Quita in 2019. What made their bond feel real was that it predated the money entirely. Two kids from the same blocks, watching each other grind before either had a deal or a platform. In May 2020, they dropped a joint mixtape, I'm My Brother's Keeper, 13 tracks of Texas trap built around loyalty and come-up stories, pulled straight from their own lives. Yella Beezy said at the time, "You're standing 10 toes with your brother, you ride for him, you go to war for him." That's not a throwaway press quote. That's the foundation. Everything since has been measured against. Now here's the case sitting underneath all of it. Melvin Noble, Dallas knew him as Mo 3, was building one of the most loyal followings in Texas rap when, on November 11, 2020, he was driving on Interstate 35E and a masked gunman cut him off. He got out and ran on foot through live highway traffic. He was chased down and shot multiple times, dying from his wounds. Traffic cameras caught the entire thing, and the footage has been viewed tens of millions of times since. It was a wound Dallas never fully got over. For years, there was no high-profile arrest. That changed in March 2025, when a grand jury indicted Yella Beezy on capital murder for remuneration, the legal term for murder for hire, alleging he paid a man named Kewan Dontre White to carry out the killing. A second man, Devin Maurice Brown, was indicted on related charges. The feud between Yella Beezy and Mo 3 had already been one of Dallas's worst-kept secrets for years before that, marked by shootings, social media exchanges, and songs that seemed to reference each other. In 2018, Yella Beezy himself survived being shot multiple times on the Sam Rayburn Tollway, a shooting that was never publicly resolved in court, but that added to the climate of violence surrounding both men long before Mo 3 was killed. The moment Yella Beezy was arrested, the internet immediately started asking who talked. Within days, social media pages and YouTube channels began pointing directly at Trapboy Freddy, the theory being that he had some proximity to what happened, and at some point, gave investigators something. It spread because on the surface it fit. Freddy and Yella Beezy were inseparable, so if anyone knew anything, it would be him. Then, in April 2025, Freddy publicly stated that Yella Beezy had sold everything to cover his bond and legal fees. That comment exploded across platforms, and people read it as Freddy distancing himself, maybe even signaling that Yella Beezy was on his own now. But none of that actually amounted to evidence Freddy had cooperated with investigators. It was internet math stacking a public statement about finances on top of speculation, and Freddy's own prior federal gun charge, and arriving at a conclusion nobody had actually confirmed. Then the courtroom spoke for itself. During pre-trial hearings, lead detective Eric Barnes was questioned by defense attorney Toby Shook and testified that investigators did not currently have probable cause to arrest Trapboy Freddy. Read that again? The lead detective on the case testified under oath that law enforcement didn't have grounds to arrest a man the internet had already convicted of snitching. That testimony didn't get anywhere near the attention the original rumors did, because that's how this always works. The accusation gets the views, the correction gets buried. That doesn't mean Freddy's name disappeared from the case entirely. Prosecutors have argued throughout pre-trial hearings that understanding why Mo3 was killed requires the jury to understand the full landscape of relationships and collaborations around the feud, which is where materials touching on Freddy occasionally surfaced, not because he was cooperating, but as contextual material for the broader narrative. That distinction between referenced for context and cooperating as a witness is significant, but it collapsed almost instantly once clips and screenshots started circulating online. The prosecution's actual strategy is aggressive. Investigators have pointed to multiple Yella Beezy songs, including Hitmas, Keep It in the Streets, and On Ya Head, arguing the lyrics reference paying for violence and placing a bounty, and that the music should be read as a window into his actual intentions rather than artistic expression. They've also sought to introduce social media posts, interview footage, and evidence of earlier shootings to show how the feud escalated, alongside witness statements, phone records, and the detail that Conway withdrew $40,000 in cash within days of Mo3's killing. The defense has fought nearly every piece of it. At a July 17, 2026 hearing, defense expert Dr. Eric Nielsen, who studies the use of rap lyrics in criminal trials, testified that rappers build personas and exaggerate as a core part of the art form, and that research shows people interpret identical lyrics far more literally when labeled as rap versus country music, warning that treating verses as autobiographical confessions risks convicting people for things they never did. The judge hadn't ruled on the lyrics question as of the most recent hearing, and that ruling will shape how much weight the prosecution's case carries once the trial starts August 24, 2026. Now, about the confrontation itself, because this is the part the whole city has been locked in on. The streets have been saying that once word got back to Yella Beezy about Freddy's name surfacing in the investigation, he didn't let it slide, that he went directly at him demanding answers from the man who once said they'd go to war for each other. Here's what's actually confirmed. Freddy's April 2025 statement about Yella Beezy selling everything to cover his legal fees is real and did circulate widely, read by many as Freddy putting distance between himself and the situation. When the snitching allegations hit a fever pitch, Freddy publicly denied cooperating with law enforcement and pushed back against the narrative. But by then, the accusation had already traveled miles further than the denial ever would. Whether an actual face-to-face confrontation happened exactly the way the streets describe it, or whether it played out differently in private, has never been publicly verified. What is verified is that the distance between these two is real, and Dallas has been watching it grow in real time. The community has split down the middle over it. Some point to Detective Barnes's testimony as proof the snitching accusations never had real foundation. Others see the fact that Freddy's name came up in courtroom discussions at all as proof enough that something shifted between them. And that split matters, because this case sits inside a bigger national fight over whether rap lyrics belong in criminal trials at all. A debate that Young Thug's case in Atlanta helped push into the mainstream, with several states now passing laws limiting how lyrics can be used as evidence. However, Judge Chica Noonan rules on that question in Dallas could shape how similar cases get handled going forward. Here's where everything stands right now. Yella Beezy's capital murder trial is set to begin August 24, 2026, with a final pre-trial hearing on August 21st. The lyrics ruling is still pending. Prosecutors have built their case around witness testimony, surveillance, phone records, and that $40,000 withdrawal, with the music as one more piece of the mosaic. The defense, led by Toby Shook, has fought nearly every element of that strategy as an attempt to criminalize artistic expression. And sitting right in the middle of all of it is a friendship that once put out a project called I'm My Brother's Keeper, words about loyalty and going to war for your brother that are now being heard very differently against the backdrop of a capital murder case, a detective's testimony, and a public statement about sold-off assets. Whatever the courtroom ultimately decides, the damage to that friendship's public image is already done. When the trial starts in less than a month, a Dallas jury is going to hear evidence that could determine whether Yella Beezy spends the rest of his life in prison. And every record, every quote, every declaration of brotherhood these two ever made in public may end up meaning something in that courtroom that neither of them intended when they first said it. After everything that's come out, do you think these two ever get back to where they were? Drop your thoughts in the comments.